Objective agency is a term that I came up with to account for the power of objects. Let me explain what I mean by that. I think that there are lots of objects that are codified in certain ways, given their associations in culture and in the media, that we imbue them with power. The obvious example, of course, are brands. Brands have a degree of power. When you become aware that the brand is there, then all of a sudden the object changes in value. It's fetishized. In sort of Marxist terms, it's a commodity fetish, meaning that we imbue it with power that's beyond its inherent value. If you imagine that the materiality of the object has an inherent value to it. Okay, so objective agency refers to the power that objects possess. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the power is willful, that they have consciousness and are making decisions, objects are making decisions on their own as to how they're going to implement or express themselves through and with that power. But at the same time, I don't want to say that they don't have it. I think of consciousness as something that is instantiated in relationship to our environment as we move through it. For instance, while in this conversation our consciousnesses are overlapping, so we're developing a kind of collective consciousness in this space. But it isn't just us that is constituting and contributing to the collective consciousness, but it's also everything that we've experienced in this space as well. The meal that we shared, the food that I ate earlier, the water that we drink, the sounds around us, the ambient noise, the texture of the environment, the bricks and the wood and the metal and all those things, they all possess a certain degree of complexity to them. And the more complexity, the more organized. But either way, their complexity necessitates some sort of organizing force for them to have coherence and for them to be recognizable to us. I like to think of that as consciousness, like the extent to which they are aware of, alert, and that awareness may only be measured in their both constitution and instantiation. After all, what is the measure of somebody being alert and them being present, but them actually being attentive, right, and active, and having a certain degree of intensity to them? That they're there, and they draw you to them in ways that maybe others don't, because they're a little more subdued and less attentive. So they have more or less effective presence. So objects that influence the environment have objective agency. I think something that often happens is that we're drawn to objects, we fetishize them, we imagine them have properties or powers that exceed their inherent materiality, but at the same time we're misled by why we are fascinated by them or invested in them. Because they may have things that make them powerful that we're unaware of, and we've attributed their power to something else. I think those are some of the most interesting situations. When we don't really know why we're drawn to something, we imagine a reason for it, which is what we're doing as we navigate any space, whether it be a traffic intersection, a relationship, the words that I'm spewing right now, as we're trying to make sense of them, we're putting them together with a kind of coherence and cogency, again, state power at work. And I think those experiences that exceed our abilities tend to be the most exhilarating, have the most opportunity for surprise and exuberance, associative learning, visceral electritude, and ultimately the fractalactic, which in many cases, of course, can be really ungrounding and destabilizing and nerve-wracking. But on the other hand, they can be the most exciting, exhilarating, blissful, sublime experiences that one can have. And I think either way, the experience is always on some level good, right? The intensity of the experience is going to give you something that's really, really amazing, even if it's something that's more tragic or traumatic. That there's always something positive in the differentiation between that experience and another experience that you might have. If only because it has expanded your subjective territory and allowed you to become more empathetic and understanding of the experiences of others, even if it's at the expense of your own, maybe your own happiness at a given point in your life.